Get us started this morning. Welcome everyone. I'm Gina Sudan, the president of the Wyoming County Chamber of Commerce. We have Glenn Layu and Keith Yurgowski joining us this morning. Glenn is a senior auditor with Cronick, Kaladi and Birdie out of Kingston, Wilkes-Barre area, and Keith is with the University of Scranton Small Business Development Center. So Glenn is going to walk us through some questions regarding our taxes and accounting issues, and Keith is on the call to help us with some questions that have come up regarding the PPP loans. So I know many of you have started to receive your approvals for those loans. Some have even received some funding, and we want to make sure that you have the best up-to-date information to keep you on track for those loans. So we will go ahead and get started this morning with a question about the stimulus checks for Glenn.
Okay.
All right, so everyone was sent either direct deposit or they will be mailed a stimulus check from the federal government. And one of the questions that have come up is this payment includable in our gross income for our taxes?
So no, it is not. It's not includable in your gross income. Therefore, you don't need to put it on your tax return when you file for 2019.
Perfect. And in that same arena of our personal tax returns, many people are collecting unemployment right now, whether that be the standard Pennsylvania unemployment or the federal CARES Act $600 weekly. Is that amount includable?
So yes, there's 10% federal tax withholding on each payment for unemployment.
Perfect. Very good. Well, thank you. That clears up those questions for us, and hopefully that will help some people with their documentation and accounting going forward. I think we will talk to Keith just for a couple minutes about some of the PPP things. As you all know, you can submit questions in the chat box, and we will try to get to them at the end of the call. But Keith, for the PPP loans, again, what do we need to do for these loans to be forgiven? Could you go over that one more time?
All right, so in order for the loan to be forgiven, 75% of that loan needs to be used for payroll purposes. The loans can be used for payroll costs, including your benefits, which is salaries, wages, commissions, and tips. And benefits would be like vacation time, parental or family or medical or sick leave, allowances for separation or dismissal, payments required for the provisions of group health insurance, including insurance premiums, and the payment of any kind of retirement benefits. Also, any state or local taxes assessed on compensation. In PA, we don't have the local taxes, but well, some municipalities may. If you're a sole proprietor or independent contractor, it would be wages, commissions, income, net earnings from self-employment. Everything is capped at $100,000 on an annual basis for each employee.
Okay.
The other thing, that's 75% of the loan needs to be used for those. The rest of it can be used for interest on your mortgage, rent under a lease agreement that was enforced before February 15th of 2020, and utility bills which were in service before February 15th, 2020.
Perfect. I think that covers that. Now, could the amount of the forgiveness be reduced?
Yes, and it's not an all or nothing, so that people need to remember that it'll be reduced at a percentage. So if they find out you used, only 70%, it won't be the whole. You won't lose the whole loan. You'll lose a percentage of it. And I'm not sure exactly how. You'd have to talk to your bank on that, how that's handled.
I think Glenn went through some scenarios for that. He and I spoke on Friday, so I think he went through some scenarios. Glenn, do you want to explain some examples that you had given me about the reduction in forgiveness?
For sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, if you bring back your employees at less than 75% of their original pay before the virus, That's how it could be reduced. Say you bring them back at 60% rather than the 75. Well, then your forgiveness will be reduced by 15% if you brought them back at 60 rather than 75. Say you had, just rough estimate, 40 employees and you only brought back 30 of them, but you still did pay them 100% because you only brought back 75% of your employees, you would get 25% reduction, brought back 30 people rather than 40.
Great. I think that explains it. We may have some other questions coming in about PPP at the end, so we will stay tuned for those. Again, if you have questions about your PPP, you can always call Keith directly, but if you'd like to talk to us about those on this call, type them into the chat. One of the other options, if you do not get a PPP loan, is an employee retention credit that is through the CARES Act. Glenn, can you talk to us a little bit about what this employee retention credit is, and then we'll walk through some questions.
Yeah, so it's a fully refundable tax credit up to 50% of employees' wages up to 10,000. So therefore, it would be 5,000 per employee. If you have less than 100 employees, then every employee is available for the credit. But if you have more, it would only be those employees who are not providing service right now, but are still being paid.
Okay, perfect. Are you eligible to take the employee retention credit if you've received a PPP loan?
No, at this time, you cannot take both.
Okay. And what is considered, so you mentioned qualified wages. What is considered qualified wages?
Yeah, so that would be the wages that you pay to an individual for their services, plus any health care that you pay for them as well, their benefits. So those would both be included.
Great. And now where is this tax credit taken? So for instance, the Wyoming County Chamber is a nonprofit. We don't pay like a corporate income tax, but we do have employees. Where is this credit taken?
So you'll file the 941 each quarter, and it'll be a reduction on your payroll taxes. And right now, the IRS is working on a way to do advance payments. Say if you go higher than the payroll tax amount for the next quarter, you would potentially get an advance once the calculation is done.
Okay, great. Can an eligible employer claim the employee retention credit for qualified wages paid in March of 2020?
Yes, they can. The first date that they could technically reduce their payroll tax would be on March 12th. And as of now, they're going to extend that all the way until the 1st of January, 2021.
Great. Now, who is an eligible employer for the employee tax credit?
Those would be anybody that is fully or partially suspended throughout the coronavirus epidemic, and those who experience a significant decline in their gross receipts also due to the pandemic.
Okay. So what is the definition of partially suspended?
So that would be if a governmental authority imposes travel restrictions or restrictions on that separate entity, and it caused them to, say, a restaurant or a bar, you could only do takeout rather than be able to walk and sit down and eat with your family or your friends. That would technically be partially suspended because you're not running in full operations at the time.
And then what is a significant decline in gross receipts? Because you mentioned that as well.
Yeah, significant decline would be if you're comparing your quarter, say quarter 2 of 2019, quarter 2 of 2020. There has to be a 50% decline in gross receipts per quarter to be technically partially suspended or a significant decline. And then that will go away once you hit 80% of your threshold. Compare quarter 3 to quarter 3 of 2020. If you go back over the 80%, then you're no longer in significant decline.
But you can claim this credit up to the point that you reach 80%.
Yes, correct, correct.
Okay, very
So it
good.
could be second quarter 2020, third quarter 2020, and then if you reach it in the fourth quarter, then that's when it would go away.
Okay, great. Does an eligible employer claim the refund tax credit? How? I'm sorry. And I think you covered this already. How does
Yeah, so
an
that would be on the
eligible employer claim
941.
the refund? Okay,
Yeah.
so that's on the 941. Great.
Yes.
And then how is it paid? So do I get that refundable amount?
That would be reduced through the payroll tax amount on the 941. And like I was saying, they're working on ways to do advance payments if necessary, depending on the specific situation.
Okay, great. Are there any other things that you want to talk about as they involve the employee retention credit?
Well, every day this is changing, as you know. There's new pronouncements coming out, putting new things on their website. So honestly, it's a day by day. Things could come up tomorrow that we could talk about. Things come up on Wednesday that we could talk about. Kind of just take it day by now. And more things are obviously going to develop, and we'll see in the future how we're going to handle everything.
Good. And you'll be back with us on Friday for anything that changes between now and then.
Yep.
All right.
Absolutely.
Very good. Very good. We do have some questions in the chat. If you guys want to take a look at those, and I will read through them, and we can figure out who may be best to answer those questions. So can interest payments be forgiven for business loans or just for mortgage only? And I assume this refers to when using your PPP fund. Keith, do you have an answer for that?
I'm assuming it's only for mortgage or lease payment.
And that is my understanding too, but we will find out. Again, the important thing to remember in this is if you receive more PPP funding than you can spend for those qualified reasons, you can always immediately pay that money back if you don't want that money to be outstanding as a loan. Now, again, remember the interest rates on PPP are low, but it does have a short term. So you want to make sure that you are planning for repayment in that short term. And when I spoke to Neil recently, he's our banker. I'm not sure that Neil is on the call this morning, but when I spoke to Neil recently, one of the things that he is a little concerned for our businesses is that once you get approved, you have the 8 weeks to spend the money, and then you have an additional, I think it's 3 weeks to get all your paperwork together, submit that to the bank. Then the bank has so many weeks, and again, I had this information written down, but I don't know that I have it readily available. Oh, yes, I do. So then the bank so you have 60 days to prepare all that information after your 8 weeks. Then the bank has 90 days to decide with the SBA whether or not or what portion your loan will be forgiven. So again, that all eats into the time that 18 months that the payment will be due, the end of the loan terms. So keep that in mind as you're going through this, that 18 months for repayment begins when the money is in your bank, not once it's decided what portion will be forgiven or not. So just make sure you're planning your cash flows for that purpose, and I wouldn't overspend your PPP loan if you don't feel it may be forgivable. Anything to add on that, gentlemen? Okay. Our next question says, should a separate checking account be used to track payroll and other allowable expenses from a PPP loan? If not, how should one track these expenses?
I've been advising clients to do that because I had a situation. I was on a call with a person this morning, and people have automatic bill pay set up in their checking accounts, and other bills are being pulled out of those funds. So that's one of the things that you could alleviate to make sure that the money's going towards those payroll costs, is to have a separate account.
Okay. And then if you don't set up a separate account, then how should you track those expenses? And I just want to say I use QuickBooks Online for our payroll, and they have created some great quarterly reports for you, and they tell you that they are specifically for your PPP loan. So it shows you exactly the 8 weeks and what you would need to submit to your bank for that. Glenn, do you have anything to add about accounts and how to track your expenses?
I think Keith kind of nailed it, where if you're going to open a new bank account, everything that you'd be paying out of there would kind of be obviously for money you receive from the loans. I would say make an Excel spreadsheet. This was paid for A, this was paid for B. That way at the end, it'll sum down all your expenses that you had during the pandemic, and that would be able to track what you did.
Perfect. Thank you, gentlemen. Do you need to file a Form 7200 for the employee retention credit when you file your 941?
So the 7,200 would be for, I'm reading an advance payment on the payroll tax reduction. So therefore, if you would be over the threshold, then yes, I would recommend filing it with the 941, potentially to get the advance payment.
Great. And they should be able to contact whoever files their quarterly 941s.
Absolutely, yeah.
And ask
Yep.
them to file that 7,200, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then if they file it themselves, that Form 7,200, we can find a link to that and post it if they need it, correct?
Yeah, we can.
That should be available online. Okay, great. How about other questions? I'm not seeing any in the chat. I know that Tyler Emmerich is on the phone this morning, and he has some talking points about some insurance things that have come up that he would like to share with us. Tyler, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself if no one has any more accounting related questions right now?
I was talking back and forth with Matt, and I thought we were kind of setting some time aside on Wednesday, but I could do it now if you want to fill some time here.
Well, we have a few minutes if you want to talk about some of those points. Wednesday, and I'm going to get into this in just a little bit, but we have a presentation prepared regarding disinfecting office space. So many of us are preparing to go back to work on May 8th, and we have Disaster Blaster going to talk to us and many other chambers about that. So I think that will probably take up our whole half hour, and I certainly think that these insurance issues are very important. So if you have time this morning and feel prepared, if not, we can. But.
No, I can do it, and I think that we can also lump that into Friday's follow-up if any topics that I haven't got on here yet with short notice, but I'll just, I'll go with what I have.
Great, thank you.
Anyway, I'm going to start with the personal insurance stuff because it's pretty straightforward and simple. Most carriers are giving it about 15 to 20% refund on your auto insurance for the months of April and May. Some have even gone with like a flat $50 to all of their customers on their personal auto. That's pretty much on the personal side what's going on right now, other than some relief on making your payments. If you're a monthly payer, they're giving an extra 30 or 60 days. They're not sending cancellations out. Switching to commercial, the hottest topic right now is the business income loss, and whether let's just use a restaurant for example. They're closed because of the COVID, and they want to put in a claim for business income loss, which they have. Almost all business policies have business income loss on them. The problem is there's a specific exclusion for virus on these policies, and there's legislation going back and forth every day. It's a different discussion, and in the end, I don't know what's going to happen. I think that it's possible that the state or even the federal forces this issue. I did see something in California that did get forced. I didn't see a follow-up on how that's going. But I think one thing that everybody could do if they have a concern or they think that, they have a valid claim that they could get some business income loss, they should put the claim in, get the denial letter if there's going to be a denial, or maybe the carriers are going to sit on it. I'm not sure. Some are sitting on it. Some are just sending a denial right away. But those people that do that 2 years from now, if that's when this gets changed, or 1 year, at least they have this denial letter and their claim has already been filed, versus the ones that are just jumping on board at that point. The other side to that is now you're going to have a claim, and it's most likely not getting paid out currently. So we have taken the stance that if we have a insured that wants to file a claim, we are doing the claim. We're not telling them not to. And we're actually having discussions with all of our clients saying, this is where it stands. Do you want to do it?
Tyler,
So
what would you need? I'm sorry, don't mean to interrupt. What would you need to do to file a claim like that? Just call your insurance provider? Is there documentation that you need?
Yeah. So if you're directly with a carrier, just call them. The 1-800 number for the claim or whatever it is. If you have an agent, just call the agent and they'll do the claim for you. I think most people in this area probably do have a local agent, so just call them and they will handle it. Again, that's the biggest topic right now, and it hits on probably everybody in this call at some way. The other things you can do, which I think I mentioned these maybe on the first call we had, which would have been a couple weeks ago now, but one of the easiest things is lowering your payroll on your workers' comp. So mainly your construction people, people with higher rates for workers' comp, it can make a big difference not having payroll for a month or 2 months. We're talking thousands of dollars of savings and premium that you're paying. Some of your, office or whatever, that you might only be paying 30 cents on 1,000. So it's probably not worth that to make that call, because in the audit you're going to get the refund anyway. But it's a way to get money relief off of current monthly payments. The other thing would be lowering your gross sales on a general liability policy. If you have $1 million of sales and you want to lower that by a couple $100,000, that's going to save you premium. I won't get into the details on that. That's kind of the workers' comp is more of more of a savings immediately. One of the best things I've seen so far that I just got information on, commercial auto. So I talked about the personal auto and savings there, but now we've had at least one carrier come out and say that they're going to give a credit on vehicles that have been laid up for the last month or two, and they're actually going back. So and it's not a claim. It's you call your agent, they tell the carrier that there's this, we'll use construction again. They might have 40 vehicles. Well, if 30 of them have not been working because they're only taking emergency calls right now, then they're giving 8% on 30 days credit of the total premium for the year. So that's a substantial number, and up to 60 days. So they're giving 16% approximately on that. So I think it's case by case. A lot of these small businesses might only have 3 or 4 vehicles on the commercial auto, but why not get that credit back? And again, that's only been 1 or 2 carriers right now, so I wouldn't get too excited about that. But it's also so new, and every day something's coming out. So I think people are going to jump on piggyback on that and start giving relief on the commercial accounts, which I was happy to see because of all this personal that came out, a month ago. But it's good that you can go back and get this credit, even though we're already past that time that the vehicle's been laid up. And that's why I wanted to speak sooner than later, because I think as things start to open again, you're going to miss out on some of these insurance relief credits.
Definitely. So would you recommend, even if you're current policy hasn't done those reductions, just again, call your local agent and say, hey, we're interested in this. If our policy isn't giving that reduction right now, could you just keep us informed?
Yeah, I think there's probably a lot of people out there even unaware of this last one, and that's including insurance people, because it's very fresh. But everyone is aware of this business income loss stuff, and I think, yeah, call your agent, make them aware that you're interested. I think that there's a lot of people that aren't having the conversation even. So it's not going to hurt. We all have some extra time these days. So make the call, and then they'll put you on the radar. And as things change, you're in the front line.
Tyler, that would be a great thing if you could write up just a small piece for our newsletter that goes out on Wednesday. Allison can include that in our newsletter just to say, hey, this is happening with commercial vehicle rates for some carriers. And if you're interested, call your local agent. So again, that can come from you, but I think it's a great thing to include in our newsletter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. It looks like maybe some other things came in. Let me just, just again, to recommending the separate payroll account for businesses when so they're not commingling their funds for PPP. Tyler, do you have anything else to add as far as insurance goes, or does anyone have any questions for Tyler while we have him on the line?
I don't think I have anything further to add, but yeah, maybe there's some questions.
Again, those commercial policies, that would help even someone who might have 1 or 2 vehicles in a fleet that have been, not doing deliveries or just kind of laid up for a couple of weeks. Correct?
Yeah, exactly. I think any business, if it's available, and to reiterate, I think that's going to kind of get rolled out in the next week or 2 with maybe some other carriers. As soon as one catches wind, they jump on board.
Right. We saw that with the personal policies.
Exactly.
Car insurance or auto insurance.
Yeah. So just something to be aware of. Stay ahead of it.
Very good. I'm going to share my screen again and just walk through a few things here. So first of all, thank you to Glenn and Keith and Tyler for being put on the spot and jumping in here this morning. I appreciate that. Second, there we go. Second, here is our schedule for our upcoming series. As I mentioned earlier, this Wednesday, we have been contacted by another chamber in our partnership for webinars, and they asked if we would consider helping them to host a workspace disinfecting with the CDC guidelines for businesses that are reopening. We imagine that'll be a very large group of people because we're going to advertise that among all of the members in all of the chambers. So this is the information about that. You can see all the chambers that will be advertising it, so we imagine it'll be a pretty large group. We may do that one in a little bit of a different format, but then we will have Matthew Lyons back on the call from Disaster Blaster on Friday to follow up with Q&A as we have been doing. And then finally, don't forget about this, also on Wednesday, Keystone College and Ethical Leadership in the Time of Crisis. This is at 2 o'clock on Wednesday, and you can register right on our website. You can also register for the proper cleaning procedures before reopening. You can register for that on the chamber website as well. Just like you would in it on our website, it is called our RRR series. So go ahead and register for that one as well. We look forward to having everyone on the call with us on Wednesday. You guys have been great at following this series. We truly appreciate it. We're enjoying doing it for you every week. And if you have questions that have not been answered, or you want to hear about a topic that we have not covered or is not upcoming on our schedule, please call us, please email us and let us know. We are adjusting our schedule on the fly as things come up. As Glenn said, every day something changes. So we're able to adjust the schedule. We have a lot of contacts with people who are experts in many fields, and we'd be happy to adjust the schedule. This series is done for you, our business owners, so please don't feel like you don't have input. We want to make sure that you are aware of what you need going forward. Thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you and hearing from you on Wednesday. Have a great day, everyone, and thank you again to Keith and Glenn and Tyler for being on with us this morning.
Thanks, Gina.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a great day, everyone.
You too.